Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to solve this problem for both great circle distance and initial course. We're going to do them together. So before I start this problem, I want to go back and I want to look at Bowditch page 612. All right, when I look at page 612, I'm going to see that I've got my formula 36 for cosine D, and I see I got my formula 37 for tangent C, and then this rule right here is for 36 and 37, and that essentially says if you cross the equator, L2 should be negative. And then this rule right here is for 37 only, and if the angle is calculated as negative, I have to add 180. So that's what that one says. Okay, so we're going to do that problem. And then, of course, at the end, I'm also going to have to convert C to Cn. Okay, that's for formula 37 as well. Okay, so let's get started. So we're doing problem number 4, and this is in your handout there. But anyway, this is This is L1, this is longitude 1, and this is L2, and this is longitude 2. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set the problem up. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go, I'm going to start to figure out, because I need to figure out these things to 4 decimal places. So I'm going to take L1, which is 3747.5 north, and I'm going to take L2, and that is 33, and that is 51.7 south. Now, right off the bat, I can see that my L1 is north and my L2 is south. That means I have essentially crossed the equator. So I'm going to calculate L2 to degrees, decimal degrees, but I have to remember I'm going to treat that as a negative. So I'm just going to go ahead right now and I'm going to make that negative 33 point. Okay, I'm getting ready because I don't want to forget to put this negative in later. All right, so this is going to end up being a 37 point, okay, something or other. We'll get to that in just a minute. And I'm also going to have to do my D low, all right? So my D low, in order to do my D low, I'm going to draw a picture, all right? So to get my picture, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a picture like this, and I'm going to try to figure out how I'm going to calculate D low. So this is 0, 0, 0, this is 180, and my longitude 1 is 122 such and such west, that's longitude 1, and my other longitude is in the east, so that's longitude 2. So what that's telling me is I'm crossing the date line. So I'm going to add my 2 longitudes together. I'm going to add this longitude to that longitude, and then I'm going to subtract them from 360, and that's going to give me this angle. So for a calculation of D low, I'm going to go longitude 1 plus longitude 2, and that's going to give me my base D low, and then I'm going to take that and subtract that from 359. So I'm going to go 359.60, and I'm getting ready to do that calculation. Okay, so let's do a little bit of math here. Okay, get my calculator over here. All right, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take 47.5 and convert that to convert that decimal degree. So I'm going to go 47.5 divided by 60, and that gives me 0.79. So I'm going to put this out to 4 decimal places, 1, 7. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing to my latitude 2. So that's going to be 51.7. All right, and then I'm going to divide that by 60. All right, and that gives me 0.867. 0.8617. Great. Okay, now I got to do my longitude. So I'm going to have to add these 2 longitudes together. So I've got 122.27.8, and I've got 151, 12.7. Okay, this is west, this is east. At this point, I don't really care too much about all that. But when I do some addition here, so what, 7 and 8, that gives me, I think, 15, 5, 1, 7, 8, 9, 10, that's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, so that should be 40.5, and then 1 and 2 is 3, and 5 and 2 is 7, so that should be 273, 40.5. Great. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take 273, 40.5, This is 273.40.5. I'm going to subtract it from 360, and that's going to give me this angle, which is going to be my D low. So I'm going to go 273.40.5, and this should give me that's 19.5. Okay, and I can use my calculator for that if I want. This should be a 6, and I believe this is going to end up being 86, 19.5. Great. So now what I got to do is I got to take this 19.5, I got to convert that into a decimal. So this is going to end up being 86 point. Now let's figure that out. Let's see, 19.5 divided by 60, and that gives me 0.325. I only need to take that out 3 because there is no fourth decimal. Okay, and that's to the west if I really want to know that. But anyway, so here we go. These are going to be my entering arguments. All right, this is going to be for latitude 1. This is going to be for latitude 2, and I cannot forget to include this negative. And then this will be my D low. All right, so now we're ready to start doing our formula. So I'm going to do the distance first, which is formula 36. So I'm going to go back to Bowditch. And what I'm essentially going to do now is I'm going to copy this formula over onto this sheet. But as I do that, I'm going to put the parentheses in. It's inferred that there are parentheses here, okay, order of operation. And it's inferred that there's multiplication between these, but I have to solve for this term, I have to solve for this term, and then I can add them. So I'm going to copy that over the way I'm actually going to do it. And so this is going to be, I'm going to start writing that right here, okay? So cosine D equals, this is going to be sine L1 times sine L2, and I'm going to have to put that all in parentheses, and then I'm going to do plus, and that's going to be cosine L1 times cosine L2 times cosine of D low, okay? So that's going to be my formula that I'm going to use and how I'm going to run it, all right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start substituting numbers in. So this number is going to go in for this number is going to go in for this, and I've got to respect that negative. And then this will go in here, this will go in there, and then this will go here, okay? So at this point here, you can actually write all that stuff out, okay? You can actually write all that stuff out. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of go like this, okay? And this, and I'm going to go like this, okay? So at this point, I'm ready to do my calculation. I'm going to solve for cosine D, okay? So there's a number of ways I can do this with my calculator, okay? I can enter these values in like I was, showing, and, I can write that whole thing out. Or, as I'm using these arrows, I can stick those things in. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and run this as one single calculation of this whole part of the formula. So here's my calculator, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do do these two first, and then I'm going to add this to that. Okay. So I'm going to go like this. I'm going to go sine of L1, so that's 37.7917. All right, now I have to put a parentheses to close that so the calculator knows I'm going to do sine on only those numbers, okay? And then I'm going to go times sine of L2. Now I have to put this negative in there, okay? So negative 33.8617. Okay, and I have to put a parentheses there to tell it that I'm done with that. Now at this point, I can hit equals if I want, or I can hit plus. Okay, if I hit equals now, it'll solve this one term and put it all together, and then I'm ready to add these things in. You can do it either way; it doesn't really matter. But what happens after this is important. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and so as I said, you can hit equals if you want. Great. Now there's that's answered that particular first term. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the next part in. So this next part, I have to do all these guys here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say cosine of L1. So that is 37.7917. I have to put my close parentheses. Okay. Now I'm going to go times cosine of L2, okay, which is negative 33.8617, parentheses, times cosine of D low, and D low is 86, what is that, 86.325, parentheses, and now I hit that, and out pops my number, okay? So that is minus 2994, okay? So cosine equals negative 2994, okay? Point. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is now I have to do the inverse trig function. So D is going to equal cosine the minus 1 of 0.2994, all right? So, and that's going to give me a D value thereafter, all right? So how am I going to do that? Let me make that a little bit bigger for you, okay? All right. So what I want to do now is I want to say that D equals inverse cosine of 0.2994, negative, okay? So what I'm going to do, though, is now I can start all over again if I want, but what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to use the sort of the a recall function inside my calculator. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go second cosine. Now the calculator is saying, okay, well, what do you want to put in there? Well, I want to put in what I last calculated. So I'm going to go now, I'm going to go second. And then if you look at here at this button here, really, when I press second, it's really answer. So A and S. So I'm going to go like that. I'm going to hit enter. And out pops my my distance. And that is going to be 107.4204 degrees. Okay? Great. So now what I need to do is I need to convert that from degrees to minutes, because I like my distance to be in minutes, not minutes of arc, not degrees of arc. So now I'm going to multiply that by 60, okay, times 60. And when I do that, out pops my answer, 6,445.2 nautical miles. Okay, that's minutes of arc or nautical miles. So that is the distance part. Now it's done. Now, if you wanted to, you could have done it as well like this, okay? So there's all my entering arguments up there, and I could have written all that out, and I could have done these two, so I could have done sine of 37.497, I got that, and I could have done that, and then that becomes that, and that becomes that, and that becomes that, and then these two together become this, okay? So this is how this is all going down, okay? That becomes that. That becomes that, that becomes that, that becomes that, that becomes that. Then I add those two together, okay? And those become this. I can add do all three of these together, and that becomes that. And then I take both of those, and that becomes that. And then I do, okay, anyway. So there's a lot of different ways you can do this, okay? But that's how I did it with my calculator. Great. So now I'm ready to go on to the next formula, okay? So my next formula is the tanC formula. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to look at this, and I've got my tanC formula right here. So essentially now what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that over here, okay? So now I'm going to do tanC equals sine of D low divided by cosine of L1 tangent of L2, and those two must be multiplied before I do anything else with them, minus, and I'm going to do this, sine of L1, all right, and let me get my times cosine of D low, okay? So now, if I want to, I can take those and I can now start to, populate this equation and start to solve it and all those kinds of things. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do most of that on my calculator again, okay? So I'm going to go clear like this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with my first term, okay? So I'm going to go sine of D low. So D low is 86.325. All right, and I had to put my parentheses to close that out. Great. Now I'm going to do my next step. Now this is the step that's most complicated if you're trying to run this all out together. So if you're, and I don't recommend doing this unless you're following what I'm doing here. But what I got to do here is I have to solve this entire thing. Okay, I have to solve this entire thing before I do the division. So I'm going to tell my calculator that, hey, you know what? I got to put this parentheses in here to say solve this whole thing. But now I have to actually solve a subterm in there too. So I have to put another parentheses, okay? So if this is too complicated for you, then I think you should just sort of use this, something similar to this method, okay? But I'm going to run it, the entire equation with my calculator now. So now I'm going to go cosine, and L1 was 37.7917, close that, times tangent, so tangent of L2, and that's negative again, remember, 33.8617. And now this parentheses is going to close the tangent, and now I need to put another parentheses to close this first term, okay? Now I'm ready to go on to my next thing. So it's sine of L1, so I'm going to go sine of 37.7917, close that parentheses, times cosine of D low. Okay, so now I got to switch to this one, and that is 86.325. So I got to put a parentheses to close the cosine. Okay, then I need a parentheses to close the whole bracket, and now I hit enter. Okay, and what I'm getting now is that tanC equals negative 1.7522. Okay, now I'm in a very dangerous spot in the calculation of this because this turned out to be a negative. So, well, actually, I'm not quite a dangerous spot here. What I need to do now is I need to do the inverse tangent of that. Okay, I got to solve for C. Okay, so C equals tan to the minus 1 of negative 1.7522. So now C equals, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do it like I did before, is I'm just going to, so you can do all that, you can start all over again, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go second tangent. Now I'm going to call up my last calculation by doing second answer, and then I'm going to hit enter. And the answer is negative 60.3. Okay, so now this is where it's dangerous. Okay, this is where you're in a dangerous spot in the calculation. All right, because now I have a negative number. Okay, so I've got several more things I have to do now. I'm going to go back to page 37. Excuse me, page 612. I'm going to go here. Here's the formula 37. If the course angle as calculated by equation 37 is negative, it is necessary to add 180 to the desired course angle. So I have several things that I got to do now. I got to add 180 to this. Then I got to remember that this is C, not Cn. So I need my my rules for converting C to Cn, and then I have to actually do that. Okay. So first of all, this for my direction of D low was to the west. So what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add 180. Okay. All right. So I get this plus 180. Okay. And when I get that, that gives me 119.7. 119.7. Okay. So now, but this is a C. So C is going to take, now I have to figure out what my my relationship is between. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to bring this over here. So I know that Cn is north, south, C, east, west. Okay, so now I know what my C is. So Cn is going to equal 119.7, and my prefix is going to take the name of L1. So L1 was north, so this is going to be north. So this is north, okay? And the suffix is going to take the name of D low, which is west. Okay? So great. So here we go. So now I've got my, to take my C, okay, which is north 119 west, to convert it to CN, now I'm going to have to do some math. So now, so that means I'm going to, that's going to turn into 360. And this is telling me to, the west is telling me to subtract. So now this is going to go like this. 360 minus 119.7, okay? And let's see here. Okay, so I'm going to go 360 minus 119.7, and that is CN equals 240.3. And that is the entire problem done. So there is my CN, and there is my D. Okay, now there's other ways of doing that, but that's how I did that one for this problem.